Hello and welcome back to another episode of Fully Booked with myself, Roland and Craig Touch, the owner and founder of Hidden Gems. And we are here to talk about all of the crazy things to do with this business we're in of self-publishing. And today we are actually just going to have a discussion, Craig and myself, to talk about some of the things that are going on in Amazon and in the industry of self-publishing, which I think would be quite an interesting discussion to have. So, Craig, how are you doing this morning? And yeah, let's talk about some of the things we're going to discuss.
I'm doing well. Yeah, this was something that we had talked about when we started the podcast, that we wanted to sort of do a semi-regular industry news kind of roundup discussion. It's not necessarily going to be something that's like every month. Maybe it's every couple months or whatever. I don't want to force it and have to try to find topics to talk about, but when topics come up, then I think that we'll just record one and put it out as soon as we can to make sure that it's still relevant. So that's sort of like what we did now, where there's a couple issues that are sort of more burning than they have been in the past, and it just seemed like a good time to round them up and sort of discuss them all at once and give our opinions on it and let people know about what's going on in case they aren't aware. And yeah, so what do you want to hit first? I think we have 3 different topics we want to cover today.
Yeah, so I think there are 3 different topics that we thought would be interesting to talk about. The first is going to be about advertising on Amazon being opened up to a whole new audience of people. So we'll talk about that first. The second thing we want to talk about is Amazon's return policy for ebooks, which has become quite a big thing on TikTok. So we can discuss that. And thirdly, we just have a quick chat about the different experiences and buyer experiences people have when they visit Amazon, and the frustrations and opportunities that that opens up for self-published authors. So that sound about right?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, let's start off then with the first thing, which we actually wrote a blog post about. Advertising on Amazon is obviously going to be one of the most important and powerful tools that an author can use to promote their books. And a frustration that a lot of traditionally published authors or independently published authors had is they didn't have access to that as a tool. Their publisher was the only person who had access to advertising on Amazon. And a lot of times they didn't actually necessarily use that. So now, even if your book is published by somebody else, authors, as long as the book is attached to their author profile, are able to advertise their books using the advertising on Amazon dashboard. And what does that mean for authors? What does that mean for the industry?
Yeah, and I think that the reason you wrote that article I guess almost a couple weeks ago now, and the reason why we want to talk about it is that there are different points of view on this one, and we saw some comments in the on that article that sort of were in contrary to what your take was on it. And if you recall, like when you first pitched this one, I sort of had the same sort of feeling about what it meant in terms of what some of those comments are saying. It was sort of a little bit contrary to your take on it, but they're both, I don't know which is right. And so, I'm happy to let you give your opinion on it. And I might have softened, your original title on it a little bit too. But yeah, like, I think it's something that, it's a new thing, and I guess we don't yet know what it means to the industry, or if it'll be a big thing or a small thing. But I think, whether or not, like in the article, you're saying it was another big blow to traditional publishing, that's the part that I think, people don't necessarily agree with. And so we can talk about, your take on that and their take on that, and sort of round that up.
I think it's a very good thing. I mean, one thing that people should be aware of is the fact that I do talk a lot of crap sometimes. So maybe my take on it isn't necessarily the point. I mean, if we look at the blog post, we had investigative writer said, I think you may have this backwards, especially if books are still sold from traditional houses. The increased ad revenue supplied by traditional published authors to Amazon is going to be a boon for Kindle. However, with greater ad advertising, the more trad pubs books sold. So talks about whether there might have been some backroom negotiations between Kindle and traditional publishing houses, which is an interesting suggestion. I mean, to me, the big question is, okay, authors have the opportunity to advertise their books that are published through someone else, but are they going to do it? Because they are the people who have the opportunity. I don't think traditional publishing, if they were going to advertise the books, they would be doing so already. All this does is open up the opportunity for authors to advertise their books. And it's weird because I don't necessarily think that I think the only thing that it can do is highlight just how bad the deal that traditionally published authors get. Because I was speaking to one author friend, and we were sort of talking about advertising on Amazon. She was like, I have to make a book sale within 20 cents to get my money back, because for every book that I sell through my royalty rate through my publisher, I get 20 cents. And I'm like, in that case, there's no, I mean, yes, it's open up to you, but it's like you realize that there's no point in even using it because you cannot get a return on investment with that kind of royalty rate. Whereas me, as a self-published author, every book that I sell, I get $3.50 in royalties, which is money that you can then use to make a profitable advertising campaign. So it's like opening this up to traditionally published authors. All it does is like highlight the massive inequality and the massive raw deal that they're getting. And I wonder if that's then going to cause a lot of traditionally published authors to start about self-publishing. Maybe this is just like an elaborate game of four-dimensional chess that Amazon are playing to really strike it home that traditional publishing is a bad deal for authors.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to me, that's like, it's kind of a stretch to get there, because I'm not sure everyone's going to make that connection. I think, I don't remember if it was when one of the other comments or I read it somewhere else, but basically, one argument was that traditional publishing deals are not the same for everyone. And so bigger authors are going to get advertising dollars thrown at it by the publisher. So this isn't going to be an issue for them. It's really the smaller authors, first-time authors, that traditional publishers are not going to really do any kind of advertising, and thus it falls to them. And then the question is, should they do it if they're not really making a big profit? And I guess the question then becomes like, why did those authors go traditionally published in the first place? If it was just because they didn't know any better, then that might be an argument where you could say, okay, then yeah, they're going to learn that their publisher isn't really doing any advertising for them, and if it falls to them anyways, then they might as well go self-publishing and be profitable if they're going to do that. But if they're doing it because, and a lot of authors do it this way, because they want to be, they feel more validated by being traditionally published, then I don't know that that's going to change anyone's mind, right? Like they're going to be like, I already know this was a raw deal, but I wanted a traditionally published book. I wanted to see it in the bookstores and be able to tell people when they said to me, oh, you're just self-published, like that sort of attitude. You'd be like, no, I have, a publisher, they put it out there. And so if they're going to do the advertising, they're already making that choice. They know that they're not going to be profitable, at least not in terms of a, sale, an ad to sale sense. But I guess the idea is that if you advertise it and to get notice to it, it could then blow up into more of an organic sales. If you can hit top 10 lists or top 100 lists, if you can get some exposure, then, or maybe even prove to your publisher by increasing the sales of your book and then telling them that it's something that they should invest more in, then that might be one of the reasons why, they might do it, even if it's not profitable on a, I spent this much and I got this much back kind of sense, right?
What an erudite answer. Very well said. I think that was some really good viewpoint, I think, from what it means to be an author given this opportunity. Let's flip it the other way around, though, because Dita A. Petrick in her comment, she said there are a couple of points to make. Her first was Amazon never, ever does anything to benefit anyone except themselves. So we talked about the opportunity this is for authors. What do you think Amazon's goal is? How does this benefit Amazon?
I mean, more people to buy ads, right? Like there's a whole industry, there's a whole bunch of books out there that they're not making as many advertising dollars on as they could because they're not traditionally, or they're not self-published. So why not open it up to that? Because especially if the publishers are not doing it themselves because they take on these smaller authors and they don't want to spend the money to advertise them, well, then that means that nobody's spending money advertising on Amazon for those books. So for Amazon, absolutely, it makes sense to allow the people that are most invested in the book's success, the author, to want to spend the money on their advertising platform, whereas before they couldn't. Now they can, right? It's just more money for Amazon. So I agree. You know, it's definitely an Amazon plus point.
Which raises the interesting question. I don't necessarily consider myself a very moral person, but for me, I cannot see how this can be an opportunity for traditionally published authors with which they can make a profit. I just do not see that as a thing. Advertising on Amazon is hard enough as it is. When you're talking about, you know, fractions of that as your profitability margin, it's like, it seems like everyone who's going to try and take advantage of this opportunity is going to fail. But Amazon is still going to collect money, maybe. So it seems like, why would they do that?
Well, I mean, I think you just answered that, right? Amazon's going to make money regardless of whether the author is profitable or not. But like I said, I think that a lot of authors are doing it for other reasons, like in the hopes that it will give them the exposure they need to get more organic sales, or by showing their publisher that the book is good enough that if a bit of advertising is spent on it, it does better. And maybe the publisher would then say, okay, you know what, this book is worth us spending some dollars on too.
I think that's a really good perspective, because I guess you could be like, okay, I know I'm not going to make any money on this, but it'll pay for itself. And actually, to be honest, in terms of advertising on Amazon, that's often the thing. You want a campaign that breaks even, because it might break even on that one book, but it will elevate all of the rest of your books. So if you're like in it for the long thing, and I guess traditionally published authors who might have their first book traditionally published, but the rest of them self-published, and they were never able to advertise that first book, now they can. And even though it might be like making a loss for them, it makes a profit on the back end for the books they've traditionally published. I mean, I know a couple of authors who face that conundrum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. Yeah.
So let's move on to the next thing we wanted to discuss, which is an interesting one. You're becoming quite a TikTok sensation.
I don't know about that. I think I did 2 videos and neither of them did very well. But you know, I know why that is. Like, people on TikTok, they want to see people, and you know, the videos that I was doing to highlight some of the books, you know, I was just showing the covers and the reviews and stuff. Like, that's not really the same thing. They would need the personality to come on, and you know, I'm not really that kind of guy that wants to go on TikTok and be like, hey, bye, everybody, let's blah blah blah. You know, like I'm not like that. I don't have that kind of energy, and I'm not young enough. TikTok skews much younger, but you know, that's where the influencers are these days, the young ones at least, and that's part of what's driving this second issue, right?
Yeah, because I mean, TikTok, we've seen, can be a kingmaker. We spoke to Jen Milliken, who like got 16.5 million views on her TikTok, and her book exploded. So there's a TikTok trend going around, and there's a news story we'll link to down below about that, which is popularizing the policy that Kindle books have towards refunds, which are, I believe, you can pretty much refund the book, and you can just click at the end refund, and you'll get the money back for the book, even if you've read it. And I can understand in some ways why Amazon make a refund policy super, super easy. But it does mean that if you read an entire book, you can then click the refund button, get a full refund for that book. And the author, you know, if they got paid out for that original sale, then gets the money taken out of their royalties. So they basically, you can read a book for free and screw the author if you abuse this. And there are TikTok trends, I think you were saying, that are like telling people about this and trying to promote this as something that you can do to get free books. So is that the correct take?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a few things here. So first of all, Amazon's policy of returns has not changed recently, other than maybe to become more restrictive in the sense that you can only do it within 7 days for a book. The issue, so it's been like that forever. The ability to return ebooks, but the reason why it's become this huge issue now, and you're probably seeing it everywhere. Like I'm seeing it on all sorts of author boards, K boards, and I've seen it on Reddit. I've seen people talking about it in private author groups that I'm part of, in Aaron Wright's Wide for the Win. It's all becoming a big issue because these people are telling everyone to go on, read the books, and then return them. And it doesn't really matter if you've liked it or didn't like it, if you finished it or didn't finish it. Some people are seeing, people go through an entire series, read book 1, return it, read book 2, return it, read book 3, return it. I mean, if you didn't like book 1, why are you reading book 2? Why are you reading book 3? Like, it's an abuse of a policy that is open for abuse and always has been. It just relies on the morality of the readers to not do that. And I think that's sort of the issue now. And I think, there's a number of reasons why this is it sort of blew up. It probably would have been better if everyone just ignored it. These TikTok trends happen and then they disappeared just as fast. Like, somebody will do a video, it'll get some popularity, and then it'll just go away if nobody pays any attention to it. In this case, attention got placed on it, and for good reason. I mean, there's authors that were being hurt by it. They were seeing much, much higher returns than normal. But I think, the responding to the TikTok videos, I mean, that's never going to be helpful, because then they're all just going to attack you. And they're not willing to listen to reason. Like, that's not why they're telling you to do this. They're really not telling you to do this because they think that it's valid and that it's the right thing to do, despite some of the silly arguments that I've seen on some of the videos about why it's okay, right? But there's also some of the extreme reactions from authors have sort of added fuel to the fire and sort of taken away the true argument by giving these people something more valid to jump on. What I mean is, I think a lot of authors were using the term stealing, theft, piracy, and that was their sort of argument. It's like, oh, they're stealing these books from me. It's like walking in and stealing a book and this and that, right? And that's not true from a technical point. And because it's not the same, right? Like, you're still doing something that is within the rules. You might disagree with the rules, with Amazon's rules, but these people are still allowed to do it. Amazon allows them to do it. They're not breaking any laws, not actual laws, maybe moral laws, maybe, it's not the right thing to do. But by saying that they're stealing and stuff, it has sort of changed the whole argument. And then you see all these TikTokers saying, we're not stealing, this is allowed, blah, 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 right? And so, it's just distracting from the real issue, which is it's wrong and it shouldn't be allowed, right? I mean, returns, I'm not going to say that returns should be banned completely. There are valid reasons why you might want to return a book. You might, especially on Amazon, like you might click by accident to, one click buy. You might buy the wrong version. You buy the paperback instead of the ebook, so you quickly return it. You might read, the first chapter or two and realize this book is completely not for you. And sure, those are valid reasons to return it. But reading an entire book and then returning it after you're done, that's not really valid, especially when it's not because you hated the book, right? And it's affecting authors in the sense, like, if enough people, and this has happened to some authors, where if enough books are returned, Amazon's algorithms determine that there's an issue with the book, especially because I don't know exactly, because I haven't returned a book, but I imagine you have to select a reason, probably from a pre-selected bunch of reasons. And, most likely some people are choosing, issues with the book or whatever. And so Amazon algorithms think that there are problems with the book, and they actually pull the book from sale. And then the author then loses out on actual sales during the period where that book is no longer available. Even if they can get it back on within hours or days or weeks, it still affects them, right? So it's not the right thing to do. I think, and there's a change.org a change.org petition out there that's got over 40,000 signatures telling Amazon to change their policy. And whether Amazon looks at that, who knows, right? But there's ways that Amazon can deal with it, and without actually just banning returns, right? They can put a threshold number, a certain number of books you can return in a certain amount of time. They could track how much of the book you're reading. We know they can do this because they're doing it, right? With KU, they know how many pages you've read. If you've read over 20% of the book, then you can't return it. It's something like that. They could come up with solutions that would make the problem better, or you make it better for both sides. But whether or not they're going to do that, that's really the question, right?
Yeah. And I think you nailed it. There are solutions that exist to this. I think at the end of the day, authors do sometimes have to take a step back and say, like, okay, you know what, if someone is reading all my books and returning them, that does give screw me out of the royalties. Maybe it damages me, but isn't it kind of flattering that people are taking the time to pirate my book? Because I don't know about you, but when I first started being quite successful with self-publishing, I'd find my books on the Piracy websites. And originally I used to be like, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? And after a while, it's like, this happens, whatever. You're never going to stop that. But these people who are pirating the books were never going to buy my book in the first place. So I'm not really making any more money. When I launch my book, I put it in a 5-day free promo and I give away thousands of copies, and I don't complain then. So, like, yeah, it's frustrating. And these people who do this, they know what they're doing is wrong, but maybe it's not worth obsessing so much about a handful of things that go wrong. And it's still worth focusing on trying to get the book in front of people who are actually going to spend their money on it. Because I think at the end, I was just going to say, I think at the end of the day, if somebody reads a book all the way through and then returns it, they know they're doing something wrong. And you can't really change people who just know that what they're doing is wrong and do it anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, you see in some of those TikTok videos where people are like, this is my stance and I'm not going to listen to anybody tell me different. I'm going to turn off comments. I'm going to block you if you disagree with me. Like, I mean, they don't want to hear anything other than what they believe. And that's just the way some people are wired, right? I think piracy is a separate issue, right? I agree. And it's not necessarily a popular opinion among authors, but it's my opinion as well, that I don't worry, and I never did worry much about piracy, from the sense that, from a couple senses. One, the people that are pirating books, not this issue where they're returning it, but where they're actually having to go to pirate sites, find your book, download it. Those are completely different people than people that are buying books on Amazon. Those are not lost sales. For most people, those are not lost sales. Maybe for the massive authors out there, the Stephen Kings or the James Pattersons, or, where their name recognition. But for the self-publishers, it's not like people are going out and looking for it, and those people are doing that anyways. If they don't find yours on there, they'll probably just download someone else's.
Yeah.
You might miss out on a couple sales, but in general, my personal feeling is that the net gain of potentially finding a reader who wasn't going to buy it anyways, downloads it off a pirate site, likes your book, and then becomes a fan. Maybe they start buying it because now they realize that you're an author they like and they want to support you, whereas before they were just pirating to try different things out. Or they tell other people about your book who, maybe that person is a pirate and will pirate all your books, but they'll tell everyone else, hey, I read this guy's book and it's really good. Maybe those people won't. They'll go and because most people don't know even how to pirate. They don't know how to find the sites. A lot of the sites are filled with viruses. It's not an easy. You got to download the book and load it and figure out all that. It's not something that most people are doing to get their book on their Kindle easily through like they do through Amazon. So it's a different issue. And I think that that's part of why it bothers authors so much, because you can say that piracy, those people weren't going to buy your books, but this issue, it's not the case where they were, and now they're returning them, right? Because now you can still pick any book you want. It's not just picking the book you can find easily on a pirate site. It's pick the book you want, any book, and then return it and get your money back, and do it on Amazon. So you don't have to worry about all the piracy issues and finding the book and viruses and how do you load it. You just do it as easily as you do a sale. So it's a different issue. And this one would bother me if it affected me. And I think that it should bother authors, but the real people that need to make the change are Amazon. And I don't know, if they're the right people are paying attention to it, if are calling them out on it. You need the bigger authors to sort of, the big names out there to sort of that have the contacts within Amazon to affect change, right? And in a lot of cases, if it's not affecting Amazon's bottom line, I think the issue would have to get much bigger, right? Where Amazon's actually seeing a big drain on their profits. And I don't think that it's big enough now. I think for certain authors, maybe it is, but I think that as the anger and conversation dies down, I think this issue will slowly go away as well, back to the way it was before, where people just return books, as much as they did in the past. So,
yeah, I think you're absolutely right, really. So, I mean, the one thing I will say, I think you raised that question of how big of an issue is this really? And I mean, I know authors are complaining about it, and I know the TikTok things are going around, but I mean, I look at my figures. I haven't noticed. Aren't necessarily selling the most books at the moment, but I haven't noticed like a real uptick. For the authors who have, how big is that? I mean, is it a huge thing? I still think that, it's always going to be limited by the amount of people who kind of know what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah. And I think, for some there it is. I've seen some numbers, I have no way to know, whether they're true, but I have no reason to think they're not. I've seen some authors reporting that, whereas they get a handful of returns in the past, now they're getting hundreds of returns. But I think that those are limited and they're not as widespread. I think that the ones where that's affecting people are the ones that are being vocal about it. They might be more visible authors on TikTok. Maybe that's one of the issues, or there might be reasons why their books are being targeted more than others. But my hope is that even for those authors, as the conversation and the attention to this issue dies down, the problem will die down too. That's not to say that Amazon shouldn't still fix the issue. It shouldn't be just anyone can return any book for any reason, whether they read it or not. There needs to be some limitations on it. But I think that, when the attention on this problem dies down, I think that the problem itself will die down.
I mean, conspiracy theory time. Maybe Amazon's like, oh yeah, you poor authors getting these book returns. Maybe you should join Kindle Unlimited. We'll pay you by the page.
Yeah, maybe. But I think that, Amazon probably doesn't want the returns either, right? So, it's I guess I don't know. I don't know. Amazon might have deals with like credit card companies and different things, right? But like, it's not good to always be refunding. I know
No.
at least with PayPal, and what I deal with, like it's not. And I don't have to do hardly any refunds. But when it happens, with PayPal, they hold back their fees, so you don't really get 100% of your money back. I don't know how it works with credit cards and if they give you the fees back or not, but I think that there's probably like, issues. Amazon's big enough; they probably wouldn't have a big issue with them either. But I can't imagine that it's something that they would ever really want to be happening.
No. That's why I did preface it with conspiracy theory.
Exactly.
So let's move on to the third topic. This is kind of, they haven't written any news stories about this, but it's something that occurred to me as kind of a thing that maybe is worthy of discussion. That is, I was jumping into my book series to start an advertising on Amazon campaign. And the first place I like to start is the also bought section. And if you've been self-publishing for a while, you should be very familiar with this. It used to be the best advertising money couldn't buy. It is a ribbon of content on your book page for whatever book you've published, and it has recommendations of other books, as in people who bought this book also bought these books. And just as you are basically promoting other people's books to the also bought on your book page, thousands of other authors, or hundreds of other authors, depending on how many books you've sold, are also promoting your book on their also bought section. And it's an organic piece of information that Amazon provides. So it has real value. It's a great place for authors to find keywords. It's a great place for readers to find other books that are going to be the kind of books that appeal to their tastes. And one of the big issues with Amazon is they used to have this front and center at the top of the product page, and now it's moved all the way down to the bottom, or sometimes disappeared. And that's my frustration. It's like I went in to find this ribbon of content to actually grab some comp authors' names and things, and the ribbon of content had gone completely and been replaced with something called books you may like. And I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's frustrating for us as authors to have bits of content and opportunities to promote our books moved and changed and swapped around, because it's difficult to really work out how best to approach advertising, promotion and stuff that way.
Yeah, I was looking at it too. I don't know if so books you may like, I think, has been around, and I think that's based on your purchase history. I think maybe they've moved it now to where the Autobots used to be. But I don't think that it was meant. And all this is really prefaced by, this is just my opinion and guesses, because we don't really have any insight into this. But my feeling is it's not meant to be a replacement. They're just shifting things around, right? If I look at my own books you may like, it's filled with YA fantasy that my son has been reading off of my account, and so that is. This is all, pages and pages of the stuff that he would like, a lot of dragon stuff, because he reads anything with dragons in it. So, and I don't. So I know that these are like, books. He's the one doing that. So, but there's another section called Explore Similar Books. And I think that's been there for a little while too. But I wonder if that's the replacement, if, that's meant to be the same thing as Autobots, because how are they explore similar books means the same thing, I think, as Autobots, right? The Autobots are, if somebody bought this, they also bought that. And I guess the idea is that people are buying books that are that, like, just like I'm saying with my books you may like being all YA dragon fantasy, my son is buying one type of book. So the Autobots in general would be, a person likes this, he also bought this and also bought that, which translates to similar books. And whereas in the past you could your Autobots might be filled with a few weirder things, because maybe enough people bought something that wasn't quite the same. It seems like they've added a line of tags of filters so that you could make those similar books even more similar, right? So on mine, if I'm looking at a fantasy, or sorry, at a romance novel, in mine, the Explore Similar Books has a bunch of romance books, but under Explore Similar Books, it's got in a series. So that's what's selected now: Kindle Unlimited Eligible Romance, Science Fiction and Fantasy, Paranormal and Urban Romantic. So if I click one of those, it changes that similar books filter. So I wonder if this is more an evolution of Ossobots, in the sense that they've renamed it to something that maybe makes more sense to people. You know, Ossobots, Explore Similar Books maybe sounds a little better than Ossobots, and given it a little bit more usefulness by allowing you to filter it on subgenres and such.
Well, I'm going to share my screen now. And I realize for people listening on the podcast, you're not actually going to be able to see this, but I think we're not going to spend very long on this, and just give a certain amount of context. I think that'll be interesting. So let's go. Can you see my screen now? Hello? Can you see my screen? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Excellent. So let me go back to this. So this is my book on Chrome, the first book in my series. It's just interesting to look through. You know, you've got an advert here. Scroll down, you've got other books in the series, which obviously works in my favor. Then you have products related to this item, which is a ribbon of advertising. You can see my book here because I do defensive advertising. Another ribbon of advertising, and then scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you have books you may like. And it's interesting because normally when I had a books you may like, it was filled with Diary of a Wimpy Kid books, because that's what my 10-year-old likes to eat, likes to read. Sorry. And now it's a weird bunch of books that I'm kind of like, they don't necessarily strike me as books I would like. Oh, here we've got Dogman. And then books you may like in Kindle Unlimited. This is where the also bought section used to be. And it's kind of interesting because books you may like, is this targeted towards me or targeted towards other readers? And I'll show you by pulling
so
up.
You don't have a Explore Similar Books tab?
No.
Oh, okay. So that's different between ours then.
So here we have Mozilla Firefox. Can you still see this?
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar. They have the books in the series, products related to this item. So this is all advertising. Products related to this item, that's all advertising. We scroll right down to the bottom. Now you have customers also search, and then customers who viewed this item also viewed. So this is an also bought kind of. And that makes sense because all of the other books are books in my series. So I know that this is an organic algorithm.
That's an also viewed. It doesn't necessarily mean also bought though, right?
No, it doesn't. But what it means is like there is an actual tangible link between that. Right. So we know it's not targeted towards me. It is actually like customers who viewed this book also viewed this book. And it makes sense because all of the books here are my other books. This one, customers also search, that makes kind of a sense with the keywords they're looking for. But then, yeah, there's no strict also support. So it's just, I'll stop sharing my screen now. But it's just interesting to me how the experience that we have as customers of Amazon differs quite widely. And what are they doing? And are they doing A/B experiments here? How do we as authors leverage this?
Yeah, so I'll show you what I'm seeing then, since I thought that you had this as well. So I have this Explore Similar Books, and this is what I was talking about, where I think that this is sort of the replacement or evolution of the Ossobots, because it is, I imagine that's where they're getting the fact they're similar from. I mean, maybe not. Maybe they're just picking books that are the same subgenre, have the same keywords, hard to say, but you're able to filter it and actually add in, I guess, multiple filters, right? So 3 of these are selected. So you can see if I click romance in a series, then it's giving me all that it's filtering it to different things. So it could be that this is Ossobots 2.0, or maybe it's just using some other algorithm, because I also have the books you may like down here, which is where I was talking about how, these are dragon, all that stuff that my son is.
Can I ask which book you're on at the moment? Or which book?
So this is a
yes,
Morgan Bryce. Yeah.
So I've actually read that one. It's about the goat shifters.
Right. So, but that's the thing. If you see in the explore similar books, there's shifter stuff. This is an MM romance, so there's MM stuff.
And there are other Morgan Bryce books in this. Yeah, that makes sense. That looks like it's an also bought, even if it's not, or it's at least kind of a similar. People who bought this book kind of go along this thing. That seems quite organic. And the one underneath, you're right, seems to be more targeted towards your son. Right.
Yeah. So, I guess the reason why we were talking about this too is that, you were saying that it's sort of frustrating for authors, and especially when you want to advertise and when you want to market your book, to have this constantly changing product page where you don't really know what the sources of the information are, because with the Ossobots, that was sort of a really rich source of information you could use to build your own keywords and build your own lists of books that might be similar enough to you. And now when you look at this explore similar books, if it's true that it's Ossobots, then sure, you could use it the same way. But if it's simply them pulling a list based on keywords, that's not necessarily as useful, right? Because that doesn't necessarily mean that the people are have a history of buying those books together, that they really do have this link and will be interesting enough to the same people. Like Ossobots is like, okay, he bought this, he also bought this. That means that if I use that as a keyword, it's got a good likelihood of helping me. Whereas if it's just a list of books that have similar traits that Amazon's algorithms pulled together, it's not as useful for advertising to use as a source for your advertising keywords.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's frustrating, but I think advertising on Amazon is becoming more and more sophisticated. I think they're moving towards where Facebook are, where a lot of the targeting stuff is going to be automated. So maybe they're not even thinking about authors when it comes to this kind of thing. Maybe they're just thinking about themselves, and they're like, well, we'll take you authors along for the ride.
Yeah, I don't think they're thinking about authors. I don't think any of what they do on this page is meant to help authors out, other than to sell more books, and that helps an author peripherally, but it helps Amazon absolutely, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think you just have to adapt, overcome. I think the one thing you take away is, and this has always served me well, and I think it's served a lot of successful authors well, is Amazon's focus is to give the customer the best experience possible. And so you as an author should focus on giving your readers and potential customers the best experience possible. And so focusing on having a really, really tight blurb, a really, really good cover, your look inside super edited, as many good reviews as you can get, that is always going to end up paying dividends, whether you're looking for organic visibility or conversions through advertising. Just making your book the best experience for readers is really the only goal that Amazon is aligned with you on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure.
Right, I think that wraps up our 3 questions, and we're nearly at the top of the hour. So any final thoughts?
No, I just like I said, I think this has been a useful thing, hopefully, to authors, and it's something that we want to sort of do on a semi-regular basis as topics come up. So if anyone out there has anything they want us to cover, they're always free to email us. Otherwise, we'll catch them next week.
Absolutely. Well, Thank you very much, everybody who has tuned in for this, whether you're listening through one of the podcast channels or if you're on our YouTube video. Please make sure to subscribe to us, click that like button, leave a comment down below. We'll have links down below to some of the things we've spoken about, and we look forward to joining you again next week. Thank you very much, and we'll be back very soon.